Did you know there's a number to call when it's not an emergency, but you or someone you know needs help? Stay tuned as we learn more about when to call 211. Hello everyone and welcome to CityWorks. I'm Valerie Starn. Today we're learning about the valuable resources that 211 OC provides. Joining me now is Karen Williams, President and CEO of 211 OC or 211 Orange County, because this is a number that's in effect all across the nation. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We all know when to call 911, or maybe some of us hesitate, should we call 911? Tell us about the resource of 211.
Well, 211 is just a fabulous resource that's available both here in Orange County and across the county, across the country. And all people have to do is dial the number 211 or go to our website 211oc.org, and there they will find up to 1,200 different resources in the community.
1,200?
Over 1,200, correct.
Give us a few examples. What kinds of non-emergencies does 211 address?
So we'll get calls from people who are looking for housing. They're looking for help with rental assistance. They'll be looking for help with utility assistance, food. They could be looking for that. They could be looking for help because they have a child who has a disability of some sort and they just don't feel that the help that they're getting has been enough. People look for legal help. All different types of things that we can provide to people. And it's a wonderful service, as I said, because it's free to the caller. And what we do at 211 is we not only have people on the phone, and we speak both English and Spanish. All of our people on the phone are bilingual. But we also do all the research into the different nonprofits and the public services that are listed on our database that make sure that these are reputable organizations.
Well, as you started to go through that list, I could think of familiar community organizations that do address those needs, or for seniors or for veterans' needs. And I was just thinking what a terrific idea for one calling center. But that must have been a tremendous job coordinating just one stop, one phone call to get the resources you need. How do you accomplish that?
Well, it is an interesting premise, and the way the idea first gelled was back in 1984. A number of hospitals were very interested in pulling together some resources in Irvine, and it was initially called People for Irvine Community Health. And back in those days, what you had was, of course, a list. Right? So people would call in and you'd look at your list. With the advent of databases and such, it allowed everybody to do a much thorough job, and it was easier to go ahead and keep the information pulled together. And then in the early 2000s was when the state of California's PUC said, okay, we're willing to go ahead and open up this phone line 211, and all of the communities in California came together and petitioned to have these different organizations set up. So there's a 211 in San Diego, in LA, Ventura, Riverside, San Diego, San Bernardino, all across California as well as the rest of the country. And then what really caused 211 to gain some traction was after Hurricane Katrina happened. Because one of the things I think people probably have seen with going through the last economic crisis is that most of us have a safety net of some sort. We have our families, we've got our friends, we've got our neighbors, we've got our faith-based groups, different business organizations we might belong to. But when all of a sudden you have something happen in your family that you're not equipped to handle, you could have an issue where you have a child who has a substance abuse problem. Where do you turn for help? You could have a death in the family, and all of a sudden some of your income has gone away, and maybe you can no longer afford to stay in your home. Where do you go for help? That type of thing happened with Hurricane Katrina. People did not know where to go for help, people who had lost everything. And so United Way decided to really pick up the banner and take it across the country to say we really need to have 211s everywhere. And that's how it really became populated across the U.S.
So in Orange County, if you dial 211, you will find referrals for local resources.
That's correct.
And the same is true in each community. I'm just wondering about cell phones, because people travel all over the place with their cell phones. How are they referred to the local resources you might need?
So what will happen is that your phone call will trigger the 211 in that zip code, so that area code. So you're exactly right. So if you dial with a 949 or a 714, you'll end up in Orange County. Interestingly enough, there's some along the borderline with Long Beach with 562 that will get some of those calls that'll come here. Otherwise, they'll go up to LA. Typically, when you call into a 211, if it's not the right location, because the zip code is very important to us because we need to know what resources to send you to, you'll be routed over to the appropriate 211.
I was just curious about the mechanics, but really what we want to talk about is how this program helps so many people. Let me ask you, I know that you have a set of community goals. It's a wide range of community goals, but homelessness is a huge topic for you. So talk about the ways in which you're able to help those people in need.
Okay. So about probably 30% of our calls that come in are for housing and security issues, which is a really big number when you think about it. And we get close to 70,000 calls annually, and 100 and some thousand of web searches. So it's a lot of people looking for resources. So one of the things that we've been privileged to be part of in the county is a group that really takes a look at how we tackle the issue of homelessness. And because we went through a merger with an organization called OC Partnership that handled all the homeless information, what we've been able to do, combining with the phone call and outreach workers, is to actually go out and find where people are living, where they're living under bushes, along the river trails, wherever, in the beaches. And we have outreach workers who'll do an assessment of a person and take their information, and then what we do is we match them to the different agencies who've got the housing. And we literally every week sit down and have the outreach workers and the providers talk about where the housing is that's available. It's really a wonderful program. We just started it this past year, and we've been able to assess over 1,000 people so far, which is pretty incredible. And the big challenge that we have, as always in Orange County, is the lack of affordable housing. But because of the information we've been able to gather over the last year, we've been able to talk with some of the local funders about let's try to coalesce our strength with all the different agencies and provide the information so that those making the decisions about affordable housing, whether there be the builders, the apartment management associations, our local city councils, different cities in the county, that somehow we can figure out a way to solve this problem. I personally am very convinced that we as a community can solve this problem. It's not as bad as it is up in Los Angeles, but I think you'll find, and most of the viewers will be able to say this, that they've seen more people that are homeless. They're more visible now than they have been in the past.
And there are reasons for that. Let's take a quick break and come back and talk about that. It's definitely a growing problem,
yes,
and how 211 is helping that. Karen will be right back, and stay with us for more CityWorks.
Do you have diabetes? Join the movement to stop diabetes as a red strider at the American Diabetes Association's Step Out Walk to Fight Diabetes. Join hundreds of walkers who share your passion and showcase the courage it takes to live and thrive with diabetes. Gather your friends, family, and coworkers to walk with you and raise funds to help change the future of diabetes. Sign up today at diabetes.org/RedStrider. Together, we can stop diabetes, one step at a time.
My wife's drinking really made things difficult for me. I'd come home from work to find the house was a mess and the kids hadn't done their homework. No matter how hard I tried, things just wouldn't get better. I didn't think it was fair that I had to work so hard just to keep everything normal. I knew if she could just quit drinking, things would be okay. In the meantime, I avoided family and friends because I didn't want to deal with the questions they would ask. My EAP counselor at work sent me to Al-Anon family groups. I didn't think I needed to go to any meetings at this point, but it turned out to be great advice. Listening to Al-Anon members talk about their lives helped me see a different way of looking at things. I never imagined I would be as calm as I am now. Are you troubled by someone's drinking? You might be surprised at what you could learn in an Al-Anon family group meeting from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or visit alanonfamilygroups.org.
Welcome back to CityWorks. We've been talking with Karen Williams, President and CEO of 211 Orange County. And we left off talking about one of the many issues that 211 attempts to reach out and solve problems in the arena of homelessness. There seems to be a growing number. The homeless population appears to be growing. You actually have the numbers because you do an annual count. Is that right?
That's correct. We do a count of the sheltered homeless every year and the unsheltered every other year. It's called our point-in-time count and survey, and we'll be doing it again on Saturday, January 28th, very early in the morning at 4:30 in the morning. We rally about 800 to 1,000 volunteers who come out and help us actually count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Why is the count important?
The count is important because for two reasons. I believe that you can't solve a problem if you don't know what you're tackling, so you need to measure it, correct? You need to really get our arms around how large the problem is. The other is that it's very important to get funding into the community from HUD. Federal funding comes into the community. This year it'll be about $22 million, and it's a requirement by HUD that we do this count. And interestingly enough, it's done in the last 10 days of January. And the reason that time was selected is because in most of the country you have inclement weather the last 10 days of January. People have run out of their housing subsidies, and typically they'll find their way to an emergency shelter. And it's an easy way to count them. Unfortunately for us here in Orange County, we don't have the year-round emergency shelter availability. So it's really going out and finding people where they're sleeping under bushes.
A lot of the people that you are counting have specialty needs. There might be issues of mental illness. There might be a veteran that doesn't realize they qualify for a particular program. How does 211 begin to help in that way?
So one of the things that we're able to do in talking with people, and I think it's really important to know that when we're working and doing outreach with any of these folks, they're human beings. I mean, and that's one of the big things to realize is that if you do encounter a homeless person, to be able to even introduce yourself and ask them what their name is, it's amazing how far that goes because they're not used to being treated necessarily in that way. But it's really finding out what their needs are and being able to help them get connected to the different resources. So for example, with veterans, what's an interesting program, not only do we help with those who are homeless, but those who maybe have got other issues that are going on. They might have a spouse who's called because they're looking for resources. And what we do is we're in a program that can connect them to a group called Battle Buddies, and they actually are comprised of veterans where they can actually walk them through the different resources that are available in the community. They'll even go to the point of picking them up and taking them to an appointment if they need be. So that's a very interesting thing. The other thing that I would say, just kind of wrapping up with what we had talked about before with the homeless being more visible, typically the people I think that you're seeing out in the street now are people who've fallen into homelessness recently because their apartment has gone up, their rent has gone up, and they can no longer afford to stay in their apartment. They're living in their cars if they're fortunate enough to have a car. And so they tend to hang out in their neighborhoods because it's their community. And they're not the individuals that you've seen who are chronically homeless, who've got more of the big problems that we've seen. Those folks you'll find along the riverbeds and things like that. But the people in the street, I'll say, if you see somebody walking with a backpack, an adult, totally groomed, but walking along, could be somebody who's homeless.
I'm just curious, do you ever come across somebody that wants to share 2-in-1 with maybe somebody they've seen that appears to be in help? If maybe that person that seems to be living in their car at the grocery store parking lot 2-in-1 is free of charge.
Yes.
Can you pass along, hey, do you need any help? Because there's a number to call.
That's exactly right, and people do that. And we also, if you've got any kind of organization or you're interested in getting cards, we have little cards that you can hand out that are in multiple languages so that people can go ahead and know that they can just dial 211. It's a great resource for people of all kind.
We keep touching on the issue of homelessness, and that's, again, only one aspect of the different areas in which you provide support. Let's talk about some others. Domestic violence.
Yes.
A huge problem within our society. Unfortunately, it has always been and will remain. How does 211 reach out to, it may be a situation where a wife, a girlfriend, in any situation, how does 211 help?
So one of the things that we can do when people call us, we assess if it's an immediate somebody needs to get into domestic violence shelter right away. We do what's called a Warm Connect. We go ahead and actually transfer them over to one of the domestic violence shelters or programs. We have a partnership with all of the different groups that are involved in it, so that's it's based on the location of the person, and then they will be assessed by that program. But another thing that we have that I really, really like, we're part of a collaborative with a program that's being funded by Blue Shield that is actually in the process of educating doctors in the medical community about where to send people if they think there might be an issue of domestic violence. Up to this point, they haven't really known where to send anybody, and so it's educating the medical community to have those people call 211. We have a website. If you go to our website of 211oc.org, you'll see on the left side of the home page what we call the segmented portals. So there's one for domestic violence, for financial insecurity, for veterans, a number of different groups. If you go into the domestic violence one, what's interesting is the screen will pop up. It'll have the information that's specific to domestic violence, but it also has what's called a kill switch on the side, so that if the abuser comes in when the person is actually on the computer, they can just hit that and it'll wipe out the page and wipe out the cookies.
So obviously offering that anonymity
yes.
is something that might make a difference of somebody calling for help
Right.
or choosing not to out of fear.
Right.
That's a great feature.
Right. And I also think that for family members, a lot of times you might have a sister who's being abused and you don't know what to do. It allows them to get some information as well.
Now, let's go back to funding. This is a free call. How are you able to do this?
So we have funding from a number of really, really terrific private and public funders. United Way is a funder of ours, St. Joseph Hospital, the Community Foundation, Hoag Hospital, the County of Orange. We have some city funding, a couple of the cities fund us. And federal funding. We have the ability to get that. We also do some programs where we get a fee for the service, so that's CalFresh, which for people who aren't familiar with that program, that's the food stamp program, which is now, of course, on a little credit card, debit card looking thing. But we take applications for people, and interestingly enough, a lot of times if you qualify for that, you'll also qualify for Medi-Cal. So we can go ahead and get people signed up for that. Interestingly enough, then it links to free phones. There's a thing called the Obama phone where you can have a phone where it costs you little to nothing, or you can get internet access for $10 a month. So there are a lot of different safety net programs that are out there. We consolidate them. People just don't really know where to go.
So many safety net programs that unfortunately people don't realize
Right.
are just a phone call away.
Right.
We're going to take another quick break. Karen, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the more unique populations that you serve and ways in which you are helping Orange County. We'll be back with more CityWorks right after this.
Hello? Hello? I've been on the street for a while. I've been on the street for a while. I've been on the street for a while. I saw your poster outside. I saw your poster outside. I ran away from home. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do.
National Runaway Switchboard, how can I help? Call 1-800-RUNAWAY to make the connection.
You have the time to give. You have the capacity to care. You have the experience to contribute. And your country needs you, one of its greatest assets. Americans whose lifetime of knowledge and know-how will make the difference. Take what you learned in the workplace and apply those skills to your community. Shape tomorrow by being a mentor and tutor for children. Make independence a reality for people who need assistance and companionship to continue to make their house their home. Make a difference today. Get involved.
And we're back with Karen talking about 211 OC, a resource at your fingertips for so many different needs. You know, we've talked about families or individuals that have a particular need, maybe not an emergency situation, but definitely something where in their life situation they need help. And that's what 211 is, the non-emergency line.
That's right.
You know, so many families today have different stresses upon them, whether they're financial, but unfortunately those financial situations or those relational situations can lead to unfortunate situations for the children. Would you encourage a parent out there who maybe feel like they're in a situation where they're on the borderline of maybe not necessarily taking or doing the best job as a parent? Is 211 a resource for that? And it must be a hard phone call for a parent to make.
Yes, I would say absolutely. Once again, there's so many services and nonprofits that are available that have programs that can help parents like that, individuals like that. Just by calling us, we find that just by having a conversation will help to de-stress the situation a little bit. And then as we hear the individual story, we start looking for the resources that could be of help to them. And interestingly enough, we get a lot of calls coming back from people just saying thank you. They call us and say, thank you, I didn't know where to turn and you've provided me hope. And I think that's a really lovely way to take a look at it. If we can provide hope to people, just by talking and to be able to start connecting the dots for them, it really makes a big difference.
We've talked about We've talked specifically about veterans, homelessness, domestic violence, but there's another segment of society that you reach out to. And it's interesting because it's been quite controversial since Prop 47 happened. And this is a way that 211 is a resource for former inmates. So after Prop 47, we have been focusing on increases in crime and maybe increases in homelessness because they have nowhere to go, these early release prisoners. Your approach is to help them and help them be contributing members of society. So in this situation, how is 211 a resource?
So we had an interesting group, reentry focused nonprofit not-for-profit who thought it would be a really good idea for us to be able to pull our information together that was specific to the reentry population. And for those of you who have not been around the population at all, one of the burdens that they carry with them is a felony record. And that makes it very hard for them to get housing. So the question is, how do we go ahead and work through that as an issue? Because of course I think we could all agree if you've got somebody who could be functioning and be contributing to society, it's better for all of us. So we created a portal on our website that keeps the information streamlined specific to that population. There's no need to send them off to resources that are not going to help them. Doesn't make sense. So that's the group that we work with, and it's been very rewarding, I would have to say, because a lot of times I think people have gotten into trouble, youthful indiscretion, whatever, not to make excuses, but to be able to have somebody who in their early 20s can actually turn their life around, I think we would agree is kind of a good thing to do. So
it sounds like manning the phones at 211, you have to be ready for anything.
Yeah, that we do, and in any language. I should also say, besides being English and Spanish speaking, we have a connection to a language line, so we can connect into up to 150 different languages, and our website translates into 87, I think, different languages. So the language should not be a barrier.
And of course, as we've said, it's not an emergency line. That's 911.
Right.
But I'm sure occasionally you do get the urgent calls that need more urgent. For example, if you get a call and on the other end of the line you realize that person is suicidal.
Right.
Or that person has a medical situation that is dire.
Right.
What happens in those situations?
So at that point we will keep the person on the phone, but we connect over to a suicide line or 911 right away to make sure that that person's taken care of. Absolutely.
Going forward, let's talk about the future of 211. And for you, it's 211 OC. And by the way, again, that's the website, 211oc.org.
.org.
In every community, your 211 will connect you with your local resources. But here in Orange County, what are you doing to streamline 211? You're dealing with such a wide variety of issues. It must be a constant battle to try to figure out how to do it better, to streamline. What's happening?
Well, one of the things that we've taken a look at is how can we make the experience be better for the user, so that be for the client. And when they call in to us to find information, they'll give us information about themselves that we don't record. We just use it to help find resources for them. We give them the resources. The average is somewhere around 3 resources, and they'll go off on their way and make those calls themselves. But what we're looking at now is how to better facilitate that dialogue between them and the providers. So we can give them the resources, but to be able to collect some more information from them where we can send their record to the provider, to an agency, so they can be looking for them, and so that when the individual talks to that agency, they don't have to repeat all their information over and over again. I know we've all been through that experience, just even going to any place. If you're going through trying to find help on a helpline for tech support, let's say, you have to keep on repeating the same story over and over again. It's frustrating.
Right.
And then you take somebody who's stressed out anyway because of their whatever their situation is. They have limited time. They might be working multiple jobs. How can we help facilitate so that it ends up being a better experience for them and for the agencies to help serve them? So I think if you look at us as being that conduit, that's really what we're looking at doing, is being able to be that central resource.
The difference, though, when I'm calling for tech support, they can have my phone number and address, but when you're dealing with sensitive situations, how do you ensure the anonymity in situations that the person definitely wants to remain anonymous and still plug them in a more streamlined fashion?
So for those who want to stay anonymous, they can stay anonymous. It's interesting, our San Diego partner, 211 San Diego, they've actually done a survey of their clients, which will do the same thing, and they found that 80% of their callers are fine giving their personal information, knowing that it's not going to be shared outside of that other than to the individuals who might need it. But I'll give you an example. If you're providing information for a CalFresh application, that application is something like 21 pages. It's not a couple of questions. So once you've given that information, then to have to turn around and do the same thing for Medi-Cal, so on and so forth. So we're just trying to figure out a way to streamline that. There'll be a lot of security and privacy focus, definitely.
Earlier, we talked about what a tremendous resource 211 was in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Are you at 211 Orange County ready for, we pray never a disaster of that magnitude, but if there's a big earthquake or something happens along our coast, is 211 ready to serve?
We're not only ready to serve in that our calls can be picked up by the surrounding 211s. Any of the 211s can take over our call center for us, which is nice, and we can for them. But we're also involved with the emergency center deployment through the county. So even when there's flooding, any of the rainstorms, heat waves, we become the number that people are to call to find cooling centers, and the county will go out with information primarily to seniors, but to say, here's where you can go find cooling. So absolutely.
It's an easy number to remember, 211. Thank you so much. Karen Williams, President and CEO of our own 211, Orange County. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. For more information about anything we've talked about today, please visit 211OC's website, and that's 211OC.org. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on CityWorks.